Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field report. Seems like this year's coming to an end pretty fast. Had over 60 people watching the Beyond the Basics series. While the series has finished airing, the material will stay up until January 15th. So if you want to view it, just go ahead and get yourself registered. Getting some good questions on 4R nutrient applications. The setup for today's question. The grower is applying in the winter 14 ton of pen-packed cattle manure to cover his P&K needs as well as part of his nitrogen needs. He's picking up about 20 pounds of sulfur in the manure as well. The fields have either been harvested as silage or the corn stalks have been baled for bedding. The balance of his nitrogen is split, 30 pounds with the planter, and the remaining amount goes in spring anhydrous. The question is, does this three-way split of nitrogen between the planter, manure, and spring anhydrous constitute a good 4R program? A good 4R program for nitrogen needs to keep the corn happy from the beginning all the way to the finish. In this case, we're talking about a corn-on-corn situation, which means we need to deal with the carbon penalty issue, dealing with last year's corn residue. In this case, the carbon penalty will be less than a typical corn-on-corn program. Much of the raw residue has been removed from the field. But with that said, we still have the corn root system and corn stalks in the pen-packed manure to decompose. The fact that manure is being applied in the winter means this decomposition will not take place until spring. With pen-pack, we have a mixture, of course, of cattle manure and bedding. Yes, there is nitrogen in the manure to help us with the decomposition. But a portion of this nitrogen is in an organic form, and the manure itself will need to be decomposed to get it released. Once the manure is converted to an inorganic form of nitrogen, it can be used to decompose the corn stalks that are in the pen-pack. Pen-packed cattle manure is a good source of later seasonal nitrogen. Once we get through the process of breaking down the carbon in both the soil and the manure. With pit manure, without bedding, the conversion will be much quicker due to the lower amount of carbon that you're dealing with. If a grower applies pen-packed manure on fields where the corn stover was not removed, you're doubling down on the carbon load in that field. In this case, growers will see N deficiencies in the corn. The more pen-pack they apply, the yellower the corn will be, leading them to believe that the nitrogen in the pen-pack is not any good. It is, but it can't overcome that carbon load. Now, in this situation, the grower is applying spring anhydrous. But a couple things we need to think about. The carbon penalty is the most severe on the surface where all the microbes live that cause the carbon penalty. Think about where a fence post rots off, real close to the surface. This is where the carbon penalty takes place. And when a corn plant is small, that's where its root system is, right in the middle of it, trying to compete with the soil microbes for nitrogen. Spring-applied anhydrous will first have to be converted to ammonium and eventually nitrate. The core will have to tame down before the root system can actually use this nitrogen. The nitrogen core will be lower in the soil, where plant roots will need to grow to get to it, typically V6, V7. This can lead to green streaks in the cornfield matching up with the anhydrous application. When you see those green streaks, it's a good indicator that you are not covering the carbon penalty in the yellow corn or pale green corn between those green streaks. This usually leads to uneven development in the corn plants. Some are tasseling, some aren't, some are silking, and so forth. So again, spring anhydrous is good to meet the later season N needs, but it's not very good at managing the early spring carbon penalty due to its placement. In this case, the grower is applying 30 pounds of N with his planter. This is a great place to combat carbon penalty. While the carbon penalty is happening all around the small corn plant, there's a banded supply of nitrogen close to the plant that it can utilize. Based on our N trials, we would suggest that you need about 100 pounds of N applied where the fence post rots off to overcome the carbon penalty in corn on corn. Now these 100 pounds can come from a combination of dry fertilizer, weed and feed, and/or planter N. Then the balance of the N would be positioned to keep this plant happy all the way to black layer. Now based on our N trials, 30 pounds banded with the planter will have the horsepower of 60 pounds of N broadcast. In this case, he is using winter applied manure in place of dry fertilizer, which has a delay in availability. And it could leave us about 40 pounds short of paying that carbon penalty at the surface, that 100 pounds that we're looking for. If the spring weather isn't perfect, this plan as it's laid out could produce some green streaks in the corn. We could actually see the spring anhydrous showing up. Now my suggestion would be to pull some N out of the spring anhydrous and put it into a spring weed and feed, or up the rate of the planter N. Get yourself safer to making that handoff to all the other nitrogen coming later. Now the second question about sulfur. Is the sulfur in the manure enough to meet his sulfur needs? Well, the amount is probably good, but the timing again will be off. The sulfur in the manure will be available later in the growing season. Most sulfur deficiencies happen early in the season, when the soil is slow to give it up and the carbon penalty is in full bloom. I would add some sulfur to the planter pass, carrying this corn until the sulfur in the soil and the manure becomes more available. I will answer more of these questions in future podcasts. Don't forget to get registered for our virtual corn college coming up January 9th. Looks like it's going to be a great group, over 200 registered from 14 states in Canada. We'll be doing live Q&A on January 9th, so have your questions ready. If you're not already, you can get registered by going to our website and clicking on the Virtual Corn College tab. We here at CropTech want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We truly do appreciate the fact that you allow CropTech to be part of your operation. We do not take this lightly and will continue to do our part to earn your business in the new year. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.